The morning air on New Haven smelled like rain and metal. Captain Minji stood at the edge of the landing pad, watching her crew load supplies onto the small reconnaissance ship. Her uniform was crisp and clean, but her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the pack on her shoulders. Behind her, 3 children waited quietly. Hyan was 12 years old and tried to stand tall like his mother. He had her dark eyes and serious face. Daeho was 10 and could not stop moving, shifting from foot to foot with nervous energy. Sora was 8 and held a small stuffed bear tight against her chest. All 3 wore the same expression, trying hard not to cry. Minji knelt down to their level and pulled them into a hug. The smell of their hair, the warmth of their small bodies pressed against her, made her heart ache. She wanted to memorize this moment because 3 weeks suddenly felt like forever. "I will be back before your birthday, Hyan," she promised, touching his cheek. 3 weeks. Maybe 4 at most. Commander Taewon will take care of you. Why do you have to go? Sora whispered. Minji looked into her daughter's eyes. How could she explain that something strange had appeared in the void reaches? Something that made all the scientists nervous and all the military commanders tense? How could she tell an 8-year-old that if they did not investigate this energy signature, it might mean danger for everyone on New Haven? Because someone has to make sure we are all safe, Minji said simply. And that is my job. Daeho wiped his nose with his sleeve. You always come back. Always, Minji agreed. Behind her, Commander Taewon cleared his throat. He was a solid man with kind eyes and a warrior's build. He had served with Minji for 7 years and trusted her completely. But even he looked worried about this mission. Captain, we need to launch within the hour, Taewon said quietly. Minji nodded and stood. She looked at Taewon seriously. You know what to do? I will protect them with my life, Taewon promised, from across the landing pad. Ambassador Velther watched the scene with cold reptilian eyes. He was tall and covered in blue-green scales that shimmered in the morning light. His species, the Kalish, believed that emotions made people weak. He had argued against Minji leading this mission, saying that a mother would be too distracted, too likely to turn back if things became difficult. Humans and their attachments, Velther muttered to his aide. She will fail. They always do when family is involved. Minji heard the comment but ignored it. She had dealt with Velther's prejudice before. Let him think what he wanted. She would prove him wrong by completing the mission and returning home. She kissed each of her children one more time, then walked toward the ship without looking back. If she looked back, she might not be able to leave. Her crew was already aboard, 5 good soldiers who had volunteered for this mission. They did not know exactly what they would find in the void reaches, but they trusted Minji to bring them home safely. The ship lifted off with a roar of engines. Minji watched through the viewport as her children became smaller and smaller, 3 tiny figures standing with Taewon on the landing pad. Then New Haven itself became just a green and blue sphere, and then they jumped to faster than light speed, and everything disappeared into the strange colors of hyperspace. The mission was supposed to be simple. Jump to the coordinates where the energy signature had been detected. Scan the area. Collect data. Jump back home. 3 weeks, maybe 4, but when they arrived at the void reaches, everything changed. The energy signature was not what they expected. It was not a weapon or a ship or even a natural phenomenon they recognized. It was a tear in space itself, pulsing with power that made their instruments scream warnings. And through that tear, Minji could see something impossible. Ships, dozens of ancient ships, dead and drifting in a pocket of space that should not exist. They were old, covered in strange symbols, built by a species that had disappeared long before humans ever left Earth. Captain, we should report this and leave, her pilot said nervously, but Minji was already thinking 3 steps ahead. She was looking at the way the energy moved, the way space bent around those dead ships. She was thinking about the old stories, the ones that mentioned something called a Tempest, a storm that came once every 100 years and could destroy entire fleets. When is the next Tempest scheduled? Minji asked suddenly. Her science officer checked his computer. His face went pale. 6 months, Captain. maybe 7. Minji felt her blood turn cold. If a tempest was coming, and if it was as powerful as the old record suggested, then New Haven was in terrible danger. The colony had no defenses against that kind of storm. But these ships, these ancient vessels, they had been built to survive it. She could see the modifications, the strange technology that had kept them intact for centuries in this impossible space. She made a decision that would change everything. "We are not going back yet," Minji said. Her crew stared at her in shock. "Captain." "Your children," someone said. "My children will be dead if we do not figure out how to protect the colony from the Tempest," Minji said firmly. "Everyone's children will be dead. Send a message to Commander Taiwan. Tell him we have found something important and the mission is extended." They sent the message, but the response that came back was garbled and broken. The energy from the tier was interfering with communications. Only a few words got through to New Haven. "Mission ... extended ... no ... unknown ... And then nothing. On New Haven, Taiwan received the broken message and felt his stomach drop. He tried to send replies, but got no response. Days passed. Then weeks. The 3-week deadline came and went. Hyan's birthday arrived without his mother. The children waited. The colony waited. But Captain Minji did not return. Ambassador Velther stood before the Colony Council and spoke with cold certainty. "She has abandoned her mission and her children." This is what happens when you let emotions rule decisions. Humans are not fit for command. In the crowd, Hyan stood with his brother and sister. Tears ran down his face, but his jaw was set with determination. "She did not abandon us," Hyan said loudly. "My mother never abandons anyone. She will come back." But as weeks turned into months, even some humans began to doubt. Only the 3 children refused to stop believing. 6 months had passed since Captain Minji disappeared into the void reaches. New Haven had changed in that time. The colony that once buzzed with hope and activity now felt heavy with worry and fear. People walked with their heads down. Families locked their doors early. Even the sky seemed darker somehow. Commander Taiwan sat in what used to be Minji's office, staring at reports he could barely understand. Military strategy had never been his strongest skill. He was good at following orders, good at leading soldiers in battle, but he was not a genius like Minji. He could not see 3 moves ahead, or predict what enemies would do before they did it. The reports on his desk all said the same thing in different words. The Ravager clans were coming. The Ravagers were not a single group, but dozens of pirate fleets that had banded together under a warlord named Kresh. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted and leaving destruction behind. 3 colonies had already fallen to them in the past 4 months. New Haven was next on their path. Taiwan rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the tactical map. Red markers showed Ravager positions. They were getting closer every day, like a slow wave of death rolling toward the colony. He had requested reinforcements from the Galactic Concordat, but the response had been disappointing. "New Haven is too far from core systems. We cannot spare the ships." That was what they always said. The frontier colonies were expendable. If you chose to live on the edge of known space, you accepted the risks. A knock on the door pulled Taiwan from his dark thoughts. "Come in." Hyan entered the office. The boy had grown taller in 6 months, but he had also grown thinner. He did not smile anymore. He spent every free moment studying his mother's old tactical files, reading her notes, trying to understand how she thought. Sometimes Taiwan found the boy asleep at a computer terminal, military manuals still glowing on the screen. "I have been analyzing the Ravager attack patterns," Hyan said without greeting. He placed a data pad on the desk. "They always hit supply depots first, then communications, then civilian centers. If we reinforce the supply depot on the eastern ridge, we might buy ourselves time." Taiwan looked at the analysis. It was good, surprisingly good for a 12-year-old, but it was also just delaying the inevitable. "Hyan, even if we reinforce every position, we do not have enough soldiers or ships to hold against a full Ravager assault," Taiwan said gently. "Your mother could have found a way, but I am not her." "Then we need to find her," Hyan said stubbornly. We have sent 17 search missions, Taiwan said, and his voice cracked slightly. Nothing? No trace of her ship? No signals? No debris? The void reaches are too dangerous and too large. She is gone, Haiyan. No. Haiyan's voice was flat and absolute. She is not gone. She is coming back. After Haiyan left, Taiwan sat in silence for a long time. He wanted to believe the boy. But hope was becoming harder to hold on to. In the colony's residential district, Daeho was getting into another fight. This time it was with a Kalish youth who had made the mistake of repeating what Ambassador Velther said about humans. Your kind are weak, the Kalish boy hissed. Your mother ran away because she was scared. Daeho's fist connected with the boy's jaw before he even realized he was moving. They tumbled to the ground, a mess of punches and scratches. Other children formed a circle, shouting encouragement. By the time adults pulled them apart, both boys were bleeding. She did not run. Daeho screamed, struggling against the hands holding him back. She is a hero. She is coming back? But fewer people believed him now. Even some humans had started to accept that Captain Mingji was dead. It had been too long. The void reaches were called that for a reason. Ships that went too deep did not come back. Sora dealt with her mother's absence differently. She did not fight or study tactical manuals. She simply went quiet. Every night before bed she wrote in her journal, addressing each entry to her mother. Dear Mom, today I saw a bird with blue feathers. You would have liked it. Haiyan says you are coming back. I believe him. Please come home soon. Love, Sora. She filled page after page with these letters, creating a record of every day her mother missed. Sometimes Taiwan found her asleep with the journal clutched to her chest. Tear stains on the pages. The Galactic Concordat held an emergency session about New Haven. Representatives from a dozen species gathered in a virtual meeting, their holographic forms filling a large chamber. Ambassador Velther represented New Haven and the surrounding colonies. The situation is clear, Velther said, his cold voice echoing through the chamber. New Haven cannot be defended with current resources. I recommend immediate evacuation of essential personnel and abandonment of the colony. A murmur went through the assembled representatives. Abandoning a colony was a serious decision, but not unprecedented. The frontier was dangerous. Sometimes you had to cut your losses. What about the people who live there? Asked a representative from a species that looked like floating jellyfish. Where will they go? Refugee ships will be provided for those who wish to leave, Velther said. Those who choose to stay accept the consequences. A human representative from Earth's colonial authorities stood up. She was an older woman with gray hair and a face lined with experience. New Haven has over 50,000 residents, she said. We cannot simply abandon them. Send military support. With what ships? Velther countered. The Concordat fleet is already stretched thin. We cannot risk valuable vessels on a colony that was poorly positioned and poorly defended from the beginning. This failure rests with human leadership. Captain Minji abandoned her post and now the colony pays the price. The human representative's face turned red with anger, but she could not argue with the facts. The votes were cast. New Haven would receive minimal support, some refugee transport ships and nothing more. The colony was on its own. When news of the decision reached New Haven, panic spread like fire. People rushed to pack their belongings. Ships filled with refugees began leaving every day. The colony that once held 50,000 people was now down to 30,000. Then 20,000. Tae-Won stood at the landing pad and watched another transport ship lift off. His heart was heavy. This was his home. These were his people. And he had no idea how to save them. Haiyan, Daho, and Sora refused to leave. Mom will come back here, Haiyan said. If we leave, she will not know where to find us. Taiwan did not have the heart to argue with them. Then the scientists detected something new. A massive ion storm was forming in the void reaches. They called it a Tempest, a phenomenon that occurred once every century. The storm would hit New Haven in approximately 2 weeks. It would disable all technology, all communications, Old defenses, and according to the latest intelligence, the Ravager clans knew about the Tempest. They were accelerating their approach, planning to attack during the storm when New Haven would be completely helpless. Taiwan called an emergency meeting with the remaining colony leadership. The mood in the room was grim. "We have 2 weeks," Taiwan said. 2 weeks to prepare for a tempest that will shut down everything and a Ravager attack that will destroy us. Does anyone have any ideas? Silence filled the room. Ambassador Velther stood. There is nothing to be done. This colony is finished. I will be leaving on the last diplomatic transport tomorrow. I suggest you all do the same. That night, Hain could not sleep. He went to his mother's old office and pulled up every file she had ever written about defensive strategy. There had to be something, some answer she would have seen. Then he found it. A personal note dated 3 days before she left on her final mission. It was not an official report, just a thought she had recorded. If the ancient records are correct, the next tempest is due in approximately 6 to 7 months. The colony must be prepared. Conventional defenses will not work. Need to study old methods? The key might be in the void reaches itself. Hyan read the note 3 times. His mother had known. She had known about the tempest before she left, which meant ... He ran through the corridors to find Taiwan, his heart pounding with a hope he had not felt in months. "She is not dead," Hyan said, bursting into Taiwan's quarters. She knew about the tempest. She went to the void reaches to find a way to stop it. She is coming back. Taiwan looked at the note. Then he looked at Hyan's face, so full of desperate belief. "Even if you are right," Taiwan said quietly. "She only has 2 weeks, and we have heard nothing from her in 6 months." Outside, the wind was beginning to pick up. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The tempest was coming, and the Ravagers were coming with it. New Haven's final days had begun. The sky above New Haven turned purple and black. Lightning cracked across the clouds in patterns that looked almost alive, like veins of electricity spreading through flesh. The air itself felt wrong, charged with energy that made people's hair stand up and their skin tingle with warning. The tempest had arrived. Taiwan stood in the command center, watching screens flicker and die one by one. Backup generators kicked in, but everyone knew they would not last long. The tempest did not just disrupt technology. It devoured it, pulled it apart at the molecular level. Within hours, New Haven would be completely dark. "All civilians to the underground shelters," Taiwan ordered. His voice was steady, but inside he felt like a man watching a tidal wave approach with nowhere to run. "Military personnel to defensive positions. We hold as long as we can." Around him, soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for this moment, though nobody had really believed it would come. Weapons were checked. Barricades were reinforced. Final messages were sent to loved ones before communications went down forever. Hyan, Daeho, and Sora were supposed to be in the shelters with the other children. Instead, they stood in the command center, refusing to leave. "If Mom comes back, she will come here first," Hyan said simply. Taiwan did not have time to argue. Outside, alarms began to wail. The Ravager clans had been spotted on long-range sensors, moments before those sensors died completely. The attack was beginning. "How many ships?" Taiwan asked. "At least 40, maybe more," his tactical officer reported. "We counted 40 before sensors went offline." "Could be twice that number." New Haven's defense force consisted of 12 patrol ships and roughly 300 ground soldiers. Against 40 or more Ravager vessels, they might last an hour. Maybe less. The first Ravager ships appeared through the storm clouds like sharks cutting through dark water. They were ugly things, built from scavenged parts and held together with welds and weapons. Each ship carried 50 raiders or more, criminals and killers from a dozen different species. "All ships, engage at will," Taiwan commanded. "Make every shot count." New Haven's patrol ships lifted off and flew into the tempest's fury. Lightning struck their shields, draining power. Wind threw them off course. The Ravagers had better ships and more experience flying in these conditions. Within minutes, 2 patrol ships were destroyed, spinning down in flames. On the ground, Daeho grabbed his sister's hand. Maybe we should go to the shelter. But Sora shook her head, eyes fixed on the tactical display. She is coming. I know she is. The Ravager ships began landing. Massive boarding ramps dropped and raiders poured out like ants. They wore mismatched armor and carried weapons ranging from simple guns to exotic alien technology. They whooped and howled as they charged toward the colony's outer defenses. New Haven soldiers opened fire. The defensive guns were old and not particularly powerful, but they did their job. Raiders fell, their bodies crumpling in the mud. But for every one that fell, 3 more took their place. Taiwan watched the battle unfold through the few working cameras. It was going exactly as badly as he had feared. The outer wall would not hold more than 20 minutes. Then the raiders would pour into the civilian districts. The thought of what would happen then made him sick. "Sir, something is happening," his communications officer said suddenly. "What do you mean, something?" "I am getting a reading, but it does not make sense. Multiple ships, coming from inside the Tempest itself? That was impossible. Nothing could fly inside the Tempest's core. The energy there was too intense. Any ship that tried would be ripped apart." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. 1 ship, then 3, then 7, then 12. They moved through the storm like they belonged there, like the lightning and chaos were their natural home. The ships were strange, built in designs nobody recognized, with hulls that seemed to shimmer and redirect the Tempest's energy around them. Leading the formation was a ship that looked familiar despite its modifications. Battered, covered in scorch marks and strange symbols, but unmistakable. Taiwan's breath caught in his throat. "That is Minji's ship," he whispered, "the lead ship's." Communications crackled to life, cutting through the storm's interference. A voice came through, a woman's voice that had been silent for 6 months but was still instantly recognizable. "This is Captain Minji to New Haven Command. The pack has returned. Hold the line." In the command center, 3 children screamed with joy and relief. Hyan collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Daeho pumped his fist in the air. Sora just smiled, tears streaming down her face. "I told you," she said quietly. Minji's fleet struck the Ravager clans from an angle they never expected. The strange ships dove through the Tempest like hunting birds, using the storm's lightning as weapons. Bolts of electricity were redirected, focused, turned into precise strikes that burned through Ravager hulls. The raiders on the ground looked up in confusion. Their ships were exploding above them, burning bright in the purple sky. Some tried to retreat to their landing craft. Others pressed forward, hoping to complete their mission before reinforcements arrived. Minji's ship landed hard near the outer wall. The boarding ramp dropped, and she emerged wearing armor that looked cobbled together from a dozen different sources. Behind her came her crew, but they were not the same 5 soldiers who had left 6 months ago. Now there were 30 people, humans and aliens alike, all bearing the same determined expression. "Close the gap in the outer wall," Minji ordered. Her voice carrying authority that made even veteran soldiers straighten up. "Set up crossfire positions at grid points 7 and 12. Concentrate fire on their command squad, the ones with the red markings." She moved through the battle like she had never left, reading the chaos like a book and knowing exactly where to be and when. A group of raiders tried to flank through a damaged building. Minji was there first, her weapon cutting them down with precise shots. A Ravager vehicle broke through the line. Minji pulled out a strange device and activated it, creating a pulse that fried the vehicle's systems. Taiwan found her during a brief lull in the fighting. He wanted to hug her, to demand explanations, to tell her everything that had happened. Instead, he just said, "You came back." "Of course I came back," Minji said, reloading her weapon. "Did you doubt me?" "Everyone doubted you." "But you did not." It was not a question. Taiwan smiled, despite the chaos around them. "Your children never stopped believing. They knew you would return." Something flickered in Minji's eyes, emotion breaking through her tactical focus. "Are they safe?" "In the command center." "Against my orders, of course." "They are my children," Minji said with a small smile. Following orders was never their strength. Above them, the battle in space was turning. Minji's fleet, with their strange Tempest-adapted technology, was tearing through the Ravager ships. The pirates had expected an easy raid. Instead, they found themselves in a fight they could not win. Ship after ship exploded or retreated, jumping to faster than light speed to escape. On the ground, the remaining raiders began to panic. Their support was gone. Reinforcements were not coming. They were trapped on a hostile world with soldiers who suddenly fought with renewed hope and energy. Minji stood on top of a barricade and raised her weapon high. New Haven, push them back. Show them what happens when you threaten our home. The soldiers roared and charged forward. The raiders broke and ran, scrambling for any ship that could still fly. Within an hour, the battle was over. Bodies littered the ground, most of them raiders. New Haven's casualties were surprisingly light, thanks to Minji's timely arrival and tactical genius. As the Tempest began to slowly move away, the purple sky lightening to gray, Taiwan stood beside Minji and watched the last Ravager ship flee into space. How? He asked. How did you survive 6 months in the void reaches? How did you learn to fly through a tempest? Minji looked at the fleet of strange ships landing around the colony. At the people emerging from them, the survivors and refugees she had gathered, the pack she had built. That, she said, is a long story. And I owe it first to 3 people who never stopped believing in me. She walked toward the command center, toward her children, toward the reunion she had dreamed about every single day for 6 months. Behind her, Taiwan smiled. Against all odds, against all logic, Captain Minji had done the impossible. She had come home. The battle for New Haven did not end with the first day. The Ravager clans were too proud and too greedy to accept defeat so easily. As the Tempest continued to rage across the sky for 3 long days, they kept coming back. Each wave more desperate and violent than the last. But now New Haven had something it had not had in 6 months. It had Captain Minji. She stood in the command center, studying tactical displays with eyes that barely blinked. Around her, soldiers moved with new purpose. Orders were given and followed instantly. The chaos that had defined the colony's defense under Taiwan was gone, replaced by a coordinated machine that anticipated threats before they materialized. Ravager reinforcements jumping in at Sector 4, an officer reported. Expected, Minji said calmly. Redirect Tempest Wing to intercept. Use Formation Delta. They will try to flank from above, so have ground batteries ready at coordinates I sent you. Everything happened exactly as she predicted. The Ravagers tried their flanking maneuver. They flew into a killing field. 3 more ships exploded in the purple sky. Haiyan, Daiho, and Sora watched their mother work. They had not left the command center since her return. Minji had hugged them, kissed them, promised them a proper reunion after the battle ended. For now, duty came first. The children understood. They had learned a lot about duty in the past 6 months. She is amazing, Daiho whispered, watching his mother coordinate 5 different battle groups simultaneously. She always was, Haiyan said. His voice was thick with emotion. For 6 months he had defended his mother's honor while doubt ate away at him deep inside. Now, watching her save the colony, every painful moment felt worth it. Taiwan approached Minji during a brief quiet moment. The Ravager command ship has pulled back behind the moon. They are regrouping for a major assault. Good, Minji said, surprising him. Let them group up. Easier to hit them all at once. You have a plan? I always have a plan. She pulled up a star chart and highlighted the moon's position, relative to New Haven. Then she showed him the Tempest projected path, the energy readings, and the positions of her fleet. The Tempest will reach maximum intensity in 6 hours, she explained. The Ravagers think we will be weakest then, so they will commit everything to one massive attack. But the Tempest's peak is when my ships are strongest. We use the storm's energy to overload their shields and sensors. They will be blind. We will not. Taiwan stared at the plan. It was brilliant and insane in equal measure. How do you know your ships can handle the Tempest at full strength? Because we spent 6 months testing them, Minji said simply. That was when Taiwan realized he still knew almost nothing about where Minji had been or what she had done. You need to tell me the whole story. After we survive this, Minji agreed. The members of Minji's pack moved through the colony, helping to reinforce defenses and coordinate with local forces. They were a strange mix of species and backgrounds. Taiwan met a human woman named Jiho who had survived a Ravager attack on her mining station. He met a 4-armed alien called Kren, whose homeworld had been destroyed. He met an old soldier named Baksu, who had been left for dead after a battle and found by Minji, drifting in a damaged pod. Each person had the same story. Minji had saved them when they had nothing left. She had given them purpose, taught them how to survive in the void reaches, and welded them into a family. Why do you call yourselves a pack? Taiwan asked Jiho. She smiled, showing teeth sharpened by combat. Because that is what the captain taught us. Humans have this word, pack. It means family, but not just blood family. It means the people you choose to protect, the people you would die for. The captain, she would die for any of us, so we would die for her. That is what makes a pack. Ambassador Velther had not evacuated despite his promises. His diplomatic ship had been damaged during the first Ravager attack. Leaving him stranded on New Haven, he watched Minji coordinate the defense with cold, calculating eyes. Everything he had believed about humans was being challenged. They were supposed to be emotional and weak. They were supposed to fail when things became difficult. Yet here was Minji, who had not failed, who had instead spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. During one battle, a group of raiders broke through to the civilian shelter where Velther was hiding. They were seconds away from breaching the door when Minji appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. She moved like water, like violence made fluid. In 30 seconds, all 5 raiders were down. She looked at Velther, breathing hard, blood on her armor. Are you hurt? No, he managed to say. You saved my life. That is what we do, Minji said, and moved on to the next crisis. Velther stood in the shelter and tried to process what had just happened. This human, this mother, had saved his life despite everything he had said about her. Despite him declaring her a failure and a coward. She had not hesitated. She had not demanded an apology or acknowledgement. She had just saved him because that was what needed to be done, for the first time in his long life. Ambassador Velther felt ashamed. On the second day of battle, Minji's ship took serious damage defending a group of alien refugees who were trying to reach shelter. The refugees were Kalish, Velther's people. Raiders had them cornered in an open plaza. They would have been slaughtered. Minji flew her damaged ship directly into the line of fire, drawing the Ravagers' attention. Her shields collapsed. Hull breaches vented atmosphere. Alarm screamed through the bridge. Captain! We need to pull back, her pilot shouted. Not until those people are safe, Minji said. She held position for 2 agonizing minutes while the refugees ran to safety. Only when the last one was clear did she order a retreat. Her ship barely made it back to base. Trailing smoke and debris, Velther was waiting when she climbed out of the damaged vessel. His face was unreadable, but his voice shook slightly when he spoke. You nearly died for my people. After everything I said about you? Minji looked at him, tired and covered in soot. They are not just your people. They are people. That is all that matters. She walked past him to check on her crew. Leaving Velther standing alone with his thoughts, the third day brought the final assault. The Ravager command ship emerged from behind the moon with every remaining vessel in their fleet. 40 ships, maybe 50, all converging on New Haven as the Tempest reached its peak intensity. The sky turned almost black with purple lightning. The very air seemed to scream. Technology all across the colony shut down completely. Only Minji's ships, with their strange modifications, remained operational. All wings, formation Omega, Minji commanded. We are going to fly into the heart of the Tempest. The raiders will follow us because they are greedy and stupid. The storm will do most of our work. Captain, even our ships might not survive the core, her pilot warned. Then we better fly very carefully, Minji said with a grim smile. Her fleet dove into the Tempest's black heart. The Ravagers, seeing what looked like a retreat, pursued eagerly. It was exactly the mistake Minji had counted on. Inside the storm's core, lightning struck constantly. Energy levels were off all measuring scales. Normal ships would have been vaporized instantly. The Ravager vessels started coming apart, their hulls buckling under impossible forces, but Minji's ships moved through it like they belonged there. Her people had spent 6 months learning every pattern, every current, every deadly rhythm of the Tempest. They knew how to flow with it instead of fighting against it. Fire on my mark, Minji said calmly, watching the Ravager formation collapse into chaos. Mark, her fleet opened fire. In the confusion of the storm, every shot found its target. Ravager ships exploded one after another, beautiful and terrible bursts of light in the darkness. The command ship tried to escape, but Minji pursued it personally. She flew her damaged vessel through lightning and energy storms, closing the distance with mathematical precision. When she was close enough, she did not fire weapons. Instead, she activated a device that sent a massive pulse through the Tempest's energy field. The command ship's entire electrical system overloaded at once. The ship went dark, drifting helplessly in the storm. Minji pulled alongside and opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Minji of New Haven. You have lost. Surrender now, and I promise you will live to stand trial. Refuse and the Tempest will tear you apart." There was a long pause. Then the command ship's captain, a brutal creature named Kresh, spoke with grudging respect. "I surrender to you, Captain. You fight like a devil." "No," Minji said quietly. "I fight like a mother protecting her children." As the Tempest began to weaken and move away from New Haven, Minji's fleet escorted the surrendered Ravager ships back to the colony. The battle was over. Against impossible odds, New Haven had survived. Taiwan met Minji on the landing pad as she finally climbed out of her ship. He looked at her, this woman who had saved them all, and shook his head in amazement. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Minji corrected. "All of us together. That is what a pact does." Behind her, the members of her fleet emerged from their ships, tired, wounded, but victorious. They looked at Minji with absolute loyalty and trust. She had led them through hell itself, and they would follow her anywhere. In the crowd gathering to celebrate, 3 children pushed through to reach their mother. Minji saw them, and finally, Minji held her children so tightly she worried she might hurt them, but she could not let go. For 6 months she had dreamed of this moment, lying awake in her bunk aboard a damaged ship floating in the void reaches, wondering if she would ever see their faces again. Now they were here, warm and real, and crying against her. Hyan was taller than she remembered. Daeho's voice had started to change, becoming deeper. Sora felt impossibly small and fragile. 6 months. She had missed 6 months of their lives. That time could never be recovered. "I am sorry," Minji whispered into their hair. "I am so sorry I was gone so long." "You came back?" Hyan said, his voice breaking. "That is all that matters. You came back." They stayed like that for a long time, a small island of family in the middle of a celebrating crowd. New Haven's people cheered and sang around them. The Tempest had passed. The Ravagers were defeated. Against all odds, the colony had survived. Eventually, Taiwan gently touched Minji's shoulder. "They need you in the command center. Ambassador Velther wants to speak with you." Minji nodded and slowly stood, keeping one hand on Sora's head. "I will be back soon," she promised her children. "We will have time." "I promise." In the command center, Velther waited with several other ambassadors who had joined the meeting by hologram. His scales had lost some of their shimmer, and he looked older somehow. The arrogance that usually defined him was gone. "Captain Minji," he began, then paused. Words seemed difficult for him. "I owe you an apology. I declared you a failure and a coward. I said humans were not fit for command. I was wrong about everything." Minji studied him for a moment. 6 months ago, his words had hurt. They had followed her into the darkness of the void reaches, a whisper of doubt in the back of her mind. but she had proven him wrong in the way that mattered most. With actions, not words. "Apology accepted," she said simply. Velther seemed surprised that she did not make him grovel or explain further. He continued, "I have proposed to the Galactic Concordat that you be given command of a new rapid response fleet. Frontier colonies need protection, and you have proven you can provide it. The fleet would be yours to command, with resources and authority to respond to threats anywhere in this sector." "I need to think about it," Minji said. "Right now, I need to be with my family." "Of course," Velther said. Bowing his head slightly, a gesture of respect his species rarely gave to others. Later that night, after the medical checks and the debriefings and the endless questions, Minji finally found herself alone with her 3 children in their small home. The house felt smaller than she remembered, or maybe she had simply grown used to the cramped quarters of her ship. They sat together in the living room. Sora curled up against Minji's side, refusing to let her go. Deho sat close, occasionally reaching out to touch his mother's arm as if to confirm she was real. Hyan sat across from them, watching with serious eyes. "Tell us what happened," Hyan said. "Where were you? What did you do?" Minji took a deep breath. "The mission was supposed to be simple, but when we arrived at the void reaches, we found something impossible. A tier in space, and through it, dozens of ancient ships from a civilization that died out thousands of years ago. The ships had technology we had never seen before, technology designed to survive a Tempest." She told them about the decision she made, the one that cost her 6 months away from them, about realizing that a Tempest was coming and that New Haven would not survive it without help, about staying in the void reaches to study those ancient ships, to repair them, to learn how to fly through conditions that should have killed her 100 times over. "Our communications were damaged almost immediately," Minji continued. "I could send messages, but I had no way of knowing if you received them. I had no way of knowing what was happening here. Every day I wanted to come home. Every day I told myself that if I gave up, if I came back without completing the mission, you would die when the Tempest arrived. Did you know about the Ravagers?" Deho asked. "I suspected they would come. The Tempest creates opportunities for people like them. That is why I gathered others who were stranded in the void reaches. Jiho, Buxu, Kren, and all the others. We were all lost out there. I promised them that if they helped me, I would give them a new home on New Haven. We became a pack. A family of people who had nothing except each other." Sora pulled out her journal, the one she had written in every day. "I wrote to you. Every single day." Minji took the journal with shaking hands and read the first entry. Then the second. Tears rolled down her face as she read about the bird with blue feathers, about Deho's fights, about Hyan studying tactical manuals until he fell asleep at his desk, about a little girl waiting for her mother to come home. "I will read every page," Minji promised. "I will know everything I missed. Will you have to leave again?" Hyan asked. His voice was careful, controlled. He was trying to be brave. Minji thought about Velther's offer. A rapid response fleet would mean she could save other colonies, other families. But it would also mean leaving her children again, perhaps for months at a time. "I do not know," she said honestly. "Commander Taewon could run the fleet. He's a good leader. Better than he thinks he is." "But you are better," Hyan said. It was not a question. Maybe, but being the best at something does not mean you have to do it. There are other kinds of duty, other kinds of strength. Deho spoke up. "Everyone at school said you abandoned us. I got into fights defending you. But sometimes, late at night, I wondered if they were right. If maybe you had decided being a captain was more important than being our mom." His words hurt worse than any weapon. Minji pulled him close. "I never abandoned you. Not for 1 second. Every decision I made was about keeping you safe. I know that meant leaving you, and I know that was painful. But I need you to understand something. Being your mother is not separate from being a captain. It is the same thing. I protect you by protecting everyone. I keep you safe by making sure the colony survives. Does that make sense?" "I think so." Daho said quietly. Sora looked up at her mother. Are the other people in your pack like us? Like your children? Minji smiled. In a way, yes. They are family. But not the same as you? You three are my cubs? You are the reason I do everything. The pack exists because of you. They talked late into the night, filling in 6 months of missing time. Minji learned about Hyen's studies, about Daho's anger and fights, about Sora's quiet withdrawal. She told them stories about the void reaches, about flying through storms that turned the sky into rivers of light, about repairing ancient ships with tools made from scraps. Finally, exhausted, the children fell asleep. Hyen first, still trying to stay awake but losing the battle. Then Daho, his head on Minji's lap. Sora lasted the longest, fighting sleep, because she was afraid her mother would disappear again if she closed her eyes. I will be here when you wake up, Minji promised. And tomorrow and the day after. I am home now. Only then did Sora let herself sleep. Minji sat in the quiet house, her 3 children around her, and allowed herself to finally rest. The battle was over. The colony was safe. Her children were in her arms. For this moment, nothing else mattered. 3 days later, Minji gave her answer to the Galactic Concordat. She would take command of the Rapid Response Fleet, but with conditions. The fleet would be based at New Haven. She would accept missions, but only those that allowed her to return home regularly. Her children would come first, always. And if there is an emergency that requires you to leave for an extended period. Velther asked during the negotiation. Minji looked at him steadily. Then I will do what needs to be done, just like I did in the void reaches. But I will not lie to my children about it. I will not promise to be back in 3 weeks when I know it might take 6 months. Trust is built on honesty, Ambassador. That is something I learned the hard way. Velther accepted her terms. The Concordat accepted her terms. They had seen what she could do. They would be fools to refuse. The pack became famous across the frontier. Other survivors sought them out, wanting to join. Minji was careful about who she accepted. The pack was not just a military unit. It was a family. Every person had to understand that, had to be willing to protect others even at cost to themselves. Jiho became Minji's second in command. Boksu trained new recruits. Kren, with his 4 arms and incredible reflexes, became the best pilot in the fleet. Together, they saved colony after colony, always arriving when hope seemed lost. Always turning impossible situations into victories. People started calling them the Storm Riders, because they flew through conditions that would destroy anyone else. But among themselves, they remained simply the pack. Months passed. Then a year. Minji kept her promise. She came home between missions. She attended Hyen's graduation ceremony when he entered the military academy at 16, following his mother's footsteps. She was there when Daho won a colony-wide martial arts tournament. She read every story Sora wrote, watched her daughter grow into a talented writer who told tales of heroes and families and people who never gave up. One evening, sitting with her children and watching the stars, Hyen asked the question that had been on his mind. Will you have to leave again soon? Minji looked at the stars, at the vast darkness that held so many dangers and so many people who needed help.